ambition to walk the complete length of the Heysen Trail from Cape Jervis on Fleurieu Peninsula to Mount Babbage at the northern tip of the Flinders Ranges. During planning for the 1986 Jubilee 150 for South Australia, in about 1981, I rekindled those aims and ambitions and decided that as a Jubilee 150 project I would undertake that walk. The slides you're about to see are taken from the start of the walk in 1983 up until the completion of the walk in late 1986. I'd just like to show you now on the map the route that we took during that time. Starting at Cape Jervis on Anzac Day 1983, the first stage of 10 days was along the southern edge of the Fleurieu Peninsula, nearly to Victor Harbour, and then up through the Mount Lofty Ranges, past Maiponga, Mount Compass, and up into the Mylor and Adelaide Hills region to Mount Lofty, and then to Chain of Ponds on the Torrens River, which was the completion of the first stage. Second stage in August and September 1983 was from where we finished at Chain of Ponds up through the Warren and Hale Conservation Parks to Mount Crawford and Kaiserstuhl overlooking the Barossa Valley, through to Nunda, Greenock and up to Kapunda, and then from Kapunda north along the Tot Hill Ranges nearly to Burra, and then across to the World's End Gorge and then into Burra, which was the completion of the second 10-day stage. In May 1984 we started at Burra, went north over Mount Cone to Mount Bryant, just south of Booberawi, across to Garauka, a rural farm just south of Spalding, and then up the Yakamurundi Ranges and the New Campbell Hill Range to the Bundaleer Forest Reserve, and then across through Georgetown to Bowman Park near Crystal Brook, and then onto the to the Flinders Ranges proper, up the spine to the Bluff, and then down and around through the Warabra Forest area up to Melrose, which was the completion of that stage. In August and September 1984 we went from Melrose up and over Mount Remarkable and across to the Mount Remarkable National Park, the Alligator Gorge and Membray Creek areas, up across the Battery, around the back of Wilmington and through Horrocks Pass, north along the main range again over Mount Brown to the Wackery Creek and down to Woolshed Flat, and then across to down to Saltier along the old Pitchy Ritchie railway line, and then up along the Dutchman Stern to Ayers Depot Creek on the western edge of the ranges, and then down through Buckaringa Gorge past Hut Hill and across to Kanika Ruins, which was the completion of that stage and the halfway point in the walk. In the beginning of 1985, that is in May, we left from Kanika, went up to Yapala Peak and around the back of Hawker up onto Wanaka Hill, and then around through around the base of the Elder Range, climbed Mount Alec and went through to Blacks Gap and then up Bridle Gap into Wilpena Pound, where we did several tours across down Edeowie Gorge on one day and up onto Pohnpei's Pillar the next day, and then down to the Wilpena Chalet, and then around the back and up onto St Mary's Peak as we followed the trail north again up to Bunaroo Gorge, and then into the Aruna Ruins area, Aruna Valley, which was the completion of that stage. In September 1985 we left from Aruna Ruins and climbed Mount Hayward and visited one of the ochre mines that the Aboriginals used to get material from, and then went north along up to Mount Falkland and through Parachilna Gorge, up the Oratunga Creek, and then onto Mount Elkington, and then back down into Blinman, where we resupplied, and then went north again up to Artamore Ruins, and then around the back of Patawerta into Marina Pound, climbed Patawerta, climbed Mount McFarlane and Ben Lomond, Mount Andre and the Coxcomb, and then down to the west again, climbed Mount Hack, Mount Tilly, and then came out on the Warriuta Creek and ended up at Sliding Rock near Beltana. In 1986, the next stage was to start from Sliding Rock in May of that year, up an old track to Old Angipina Station, climbed Angipina Hill, and then north to New Angipina Station and Mount Searle, around to the north and end of Mount Searle and climb back onto Mount Searle, and then across to the Gammon Ranges, going up Coona Bluff, and then across onto the main part of the Gammons, a day trip across to Mount McKinley and back again after visiting Yaki Waterhole, another morning trip down the terraces and up Fern Gorge, and then up north along the Gammon Plateau to Ben Bonyarthur Hill, and then down into Bullabaloona Creek, which we followed for several days and ended up at Arkaroola Village. The final stage in October 1986 was to leave from Arkaroola Village, come back a small distance to Mount Warren Hastings, and then into Arkaroola Creek, visiting various waterholes along the way, climb Humanity's Seat, and then up towards back towards Dinnertime Hill, and then north up Radium Creek to Mount G, Mount Painter, the Armchair, Silla's Lookout, and down into Yadamutna Gorge, where we walked down to the Paralana Hot Springs. Going back up the Yadamutna Gorge, we went north to the base of Freeling Heights, where we climbed Mount McDonald and Willigan's Hill, and then up onto Freeling Heights, and then down the Mawson Plateau via the Hamilton River, Hamilton Creek, all the way out to the northern tip of the Flinders Ranges, where we walked around the edge of Terrapinna Waterhole, and for the last effort of the walk was to climb Mount Babbage, which is right on the northern tip of the ranges. The Cape Jervis jetty on the tip of Fleurieu Peninsula on Anzac Day, the 25th of April 1983, our starting day. The 11 members of the group met together for the first time at 12 noon and prepared for a 1 p.m. departure. From the left, Bob Nicolle, John Dunn kneeling, Carleen Melrose, Harold Woodward or Woody, Monica Osborne, Andrew Eastick, Dick Grant, Graham Duke, Lynn Stephen, Cameron Story and Rob West. After months of preparation, the journey is underway as we walk around the coast, Cape Jervis in the background. Soon after Fishery Beach, the first of the sea cliffs, which are a feature of this coastline, are encountered. Spaceship or holiday shack, the latter as it turned out to be. The sea caves at Blowhole Beach provide a unique way of showing Kangaroo Island across Backstairs Passage. The walk east through Deep Creek Conservation Park. This section of the park had been burned out several years earlier. The outlet of the Deep Creek and a perfect spot for lunch. The way out of the Deep Creek was steep, scrubby and slow. Later in the afternoon, a high point gave the first view of Tunkalilla Beach, which stretches continuously for 5.5 kilometres. Camping on Boat Harbour Beach on the eastern boundary of Deep Creek Conservation Park. The pages are on the horizon. Carleen, Monica, Lynn, Bob, Andrew and Graham all fighting for cooking space around the fire. The last ridge before the flat and soft delight of Nicolle Beach. Looking back along Nicolle Beach from where we had just come. And the route ahead towards Tunk Head. After Nicolle Beach, we temporarily rejoined the ranges and started through Balquidder Station. After crossing the Callawonga Creek and lunch on the Balquidder manager's front lawn, we approached the Balquidder shearing shed and Ballaparada Creek. Rob West, Graham Duke and Monica Osmond had pulled out at this stage, that is after 2 days. Rejoining the coast at Coolawanga Creek outlet and then on to Parsons and Waipinga Beach. Newland Head is in the far distance. An early morning start on Waipinga Beach after camping next to the Waipinga Creek estuary. Looking back along Waipinga Beach from Newland Head, in 2.5 days we had come from around the far headland. Following a track around the top of the cliffs brought many rewarding views. An interesting discovery in this section was the bush on the left of this slide, the rare barbed wire bush, Devesia lectina, which was found in an isolated patch of 40 or 50 plants adjacent to the track. Lunchtime brought us to the start of the first built section of the Heysen Trail near Newland Hill, about 7 kilometres from Victor Harbour. Early morning at our roadside camp at Back Valley. Rockingham Homestead near Sugarloaf Hill in Inman Valley. Overlooking Inman Valley from Sugarloaf Hill. Taking a rest on the trail near Maiponga Conservation Park. Crossing one of the many swing bridges encountered in the Adelaide Hills. This one crosses the headwaters of the Yankalilla Creek. The trail skirted the boundary of the Yulti Conservation Park, which overlooks Maiponga. The view back along the trail towards Yulti Conservation Park, Carleen dropped out at this point. Telephoto lens reveal Mount Lofty in the far distance. This photograph was taken from near Maiponga. Down the Hass-Kett Road to Mount Compass, Butter Factory, just west of the main Victor Harbour Road. through pasture country in the Mount Compass area. Mount Effie on the left and Mount Magnificent on the right. The Finniss River flows between the two. Our campsite on the Finniss River. Taking a breather in the morning fog in the burnt out Mount Magnificent Conservation Park. Breakfast at the roadside camp on Claren Road, 4 kilometres from Meadows. Approaching and preparing to cross the Cox's Creek in the National Trust owned Endlebrook Reserve near Bridgewater. Bedding down in one of the sheds at Woodhouse Scout Camp, the opportunity for a hot shower after 8 days. Mount Lofty in the morning mist, burnt out from Ash Wednesday 1983. John Dunn resting his weary bones in Horsnell Gully Conservation Park. The view west over Adelaide as evening approaches from near Morialta Conservation Park. The final day of the first section as we travel through the burnt out Mount Crawford forest. Happy smiles from Bob, Lynn and Dick mean they have arrived at Cuddly Creek or near Chainer Ponds after 9.5 days. Woody and John ensuring they don't get hit by a bus metres from the finish. The first of 8 stages has been completed. The second stage commenced from Cuddly Creek on the morning of Tuesday the 22nd of August. The next day we passed through the picturesque Warren Conservation Park. From the fire tower overlooking the Hale and Warren Conservation Parks, the telephoto lens showed Mount Lofty to the south. And the hills about Kapunda to the north. Later that day we reached the top of Mount Crawford. Thick vegetation hid the views. A break on Browns Road east of the Pusey Vale property. Heavy prolonged rain during the night had saturated everything. Creeks were now running throughout the whole area. Several dry stone walls run up the ridges to the trig station on the top of Kaiser Stool, overlooking the Barossa Valley. The lunch stop that day was vital to the process of drying out all the equipment after the previous night's heavy rain. The walk down to Bethany revealed this waterfall flowing onto Nunda Creek in what is known locally as Slinky's Gully. Crossing the North Para Creek at Tanunda, a swing bridge which was to have been used about 1 kilometre downstream from here had been carried away by floods earlier in the year. From the Seppled family mausoleum at Seppelsfield, looking across the Barossa Valley, Pusey Vale Peak in the background. About to pass under the Sturt Highway near Greenock. Bob taking in the view north towards Kapunda from the top of Belvedere Hill. Our early morning campsite between Greenock and Kapunda. The last break before reaching Kapunda. The outskirts of Kapunda with many of the old copper mining buildings. Lynn was trying to talk the camel into carrying her pack. Lunch at the Kapunda post office while waiting for our food resupply. Heading north out of Kapunda. Woody inspecting the old concrete bridge on the way into Anlaby. The bridge was built in 1919 over the River Light by the Dutton family. At our campsite at Anlaby, the weather was very cold, which was demonstrated by the ice on the tent in the morning. The historic Anlaby shearing shed. The inside of the Anlaby shearing shed. Walking north again, approaching the southern end of the Tothill Ranges. On the Tothill Range above Tarnmar. The view back along the Tothill Range with Mount Lofty in the background. The range became more rugged as we went north. Taking a break near Webb Gap, large transmission lines cross the range in several places. The view south along the Tothill Range reveals how straight and narrow and well vegetated it is. Views east from a perfect lunch spot. From Lagoon Hill, Appawinga Lagoon in the middle distance and Porter's Lagoon in the background are easy to recognise. Having left the Tothill Range at Niblet Gap, we crossed the Hallelujah Hills. The soil type altered due to the limestone nature of the underlying rock, and mallee became the principal vegetation in this area. The entrance to World's End Gorge on the Burra Creek is a popular camping area. The gorge itself is ideal for walking. Bob and Lynn checking our position whilst we have lunch at 30-pound pool on the Burra Creek. On the way to the Burra Hill, camp is on the left-hand side of the ridge. Woody's Venturer girls cooking tea with Carlene. Walking north up the Burra Creek on Princess Royal Station. Preparing to cross the swinging bridge over the Burra Creek into the Princess Royal Station buildings. One at a time is recommended. Across the swing bridge we come to the Princess Royal Homestead. The last break before reaching Burra. The happy group at the rotunda in the Burra Market Square after 9 days on the Heysen Trail. Our Jubilee 150 flag flying from the District Council of Burra flagpole at the completion of the second stage. The start of the third stage at Burra on Tuesday the 1st of May 1984. Cameron had moved into state and was not with us. On the outskirts of Burra we passed the Redruth Jail, owned by the National Trust. Lunch on the first day was at Mount Cone, overlooking Mount Bryant Township. The views from Hallett Hill, the highest point on the Bald Hill Range, were extensive in all directions. The walking was mainly on secondary rural roads. The valleys were wide, flat and very bare. The ruins of early stone farm buildings and homes were common. The open and bare nature of the area made walking difficult and dull. A visit by Penny Hawker, wife of the then Burra District Council Chairman James Hawker, with coffee and biscuits was a welcome diversion from the flat bare roads. Reaching the Yakamarundi Ranges north of Clare, we left the roads and walked along the main ridge. The horse had become annoyed as we crossed his paddock. Walking on the ridge provided many fine views to the east and to the west. Detouring off the top of the range, we approached Garauka Farm Holiday Camp for a campsite and hot showers. Mount Gregory, the highest point on the Yakamurundi Ranges, overlooks North Bungaree Station. Following the fire trail north along the top of the Yakamurundi Range. A view to the west down a tributary of Muru Creek, which then joins the Broughton River. The range starts to dip down into the Broughton River Valley. The Campbell Range rises on the other side. After crossing the Broughton River, the Bundalia Reservoir pipeline is followed. To the Bundalia Reservoir. Following the reservoir intake channel to the north, we cross the Bundalia Creek at the diversion weir. Cooking tea adjacent to the Bundalia Creek. Taking a break whilst walking north along the Never Never Creek. Still on the Never Never Creek, a very enjoyable walking area. Woody and Carleen dividing up the spoils of the morning's walk, mushrooms and quinces. The interior of a pioneer shearing shed, a far cry from the standard at Anlaby. At the headwaters of the Never Never Creek is Bundalia Gardens, an amazing collection of market gardens and fruit orchards. Lunch in a clearing in the native vegetation area of the Bundalia Forest. Our first good view of the Flinders Ranges came as we breasted the top of the Campbell Range and approached New Campbell Hill. From the top of New Campbell Hill, the view to the north revealed the pinus radiata plantations of the Bundalia Forest and the town of Jamestown beyond. From New Campbell Hill, the route was again north to the next campsite at the site of the original Bundalia Forest Arboretum. After crossing the main road at Georgetown, the trail led west through Sam's Hills and across the Rocky River. Sam's Hills were generally bare and surrounding paddocks, mainly based on cereal cropping. The approach to Bowman Park near Crystal Brook brought us into the southern Flinders Ranges, 27 days from Cape Jervis. Lunch stop at Bowman Park gave an opportunity to sort through and clean gear. Hot showers were also available, and for some the opportunity to wash clothes. Woody's clothes were still drying as we set off up the Crystal Brook. The view south as we started to climb into the Flinders Ranges. After Hughes's Gap, the built section of the Heysen Trail started again, and markers indicated the route. Several hours later, in fact, we came across the people engaged in placing markers for the trail and gave our assistance. As we rose higher into the ranges, views over the plains and Spencer Gulf opened up to the west. Camping on the roadside again, on the Beetaloo Creek, near Beetaloo Homestead. The view to the east over Beetaloo Valley was of the White Cliff Range. Ascending further north along the main Flinders Ridge, more spectacular views appeared to the west. The Bluff was the first major peak we climbed in the Flinders. And was a magnificent lunch spot with views right across Spencer Gulf. The view north from the Bluff. Heading west off the Bluff brought us to the Warrabra Forest area. And past the old Warrabra Forest Nursery. Taking a break in a native vegetation forest area of the Warrabra Forest. A fungi growing on one of the gum trees. Heading north again on go-kart track, which forms the eastern boundary of Talawi Gorge Conservation Park. Still on the go-kart track as it drops down into Talawi Gorge. Across Spencer Gulf from go-kart track. Walking west up a creek bed in the Warrabra Forest Reserve. Some of the sheep grazing in the reserve had not been shorn for over 2 years.
As we left the Wirrabra forest and headed for Bangor, we encountered the first good views of Mount Remarkable. Heading for the last camp of the third stage as we passed through Bangor. The last day of walking to Melrose at the base of Mount Remarkable. Walking along Survey Road as we approach Melrose. And coming down the last rise into Melrose. The old brewery in the back streets of Melrose. The end of the third stage of the Heysen Trail walk at the Melrose Post Office. The fourth stage commenced at Melrose in early September 1984. The first slide shows Bob resting during the climb of Mount Remarkable. Carleen walking along the ridge top to the summit of Mount Remarkable. Resting on the summit. The view north from the top of the rodeo mast, which is on the top of Mount Remarkable. Heading north along the fire trail on the top of the Mount Remarkable range. Woody preparing for lunch on the western edge of the Mount Remarkable range. A steep journey down into Spring Creek. Various views of Goat Rock waterfall flowing well after recent rain. The track north along Spring Creek. The ruins at Spring Creek Copper Mine. Early morning frost as we leave Spring Creek and head west towards Mambray Creek. Spring Creek with the Mount Remarkable range beyond. Early road construction. Note the stonework reinforcing the filled section. Grazing land separates the two sections of the Mount Remarkable National Park. Mount Cavern at the western end of the Black Range. Our lunch stop as we join the Black Range. A view north from the Black Range. A view into Mambray Creek. Mount Brown is visible in the far distance. Setting up camp on Mambray Creek. Exposed sandstone at the junction of Mambray and Alligator Creeks. The walking trail up Alligator Creek. Woody going through Hidden Gorge. The Saddle and the Cairn at Horrocks Pass. On the road reserve running north from Horrocks Pass. Looking south to Mount Remarkable. Friendly cows following Woody along the road reserve. Following the rough track along the road reserve as we approach Mount Brown. Resting in the scrub as we come down from Mount Brown. There are no slides of Mount Brown because, as on the previous two occasions when I've been to the top, it was clouded in. Wakuri Falls on Wakuri Creek was an ideal lunch spot. Down the Wakuri Creek to Woolshed Flat in Pitchy Ritchie Pass. taking a break as we approach Woolshed Flat. Bob looking at the Devil's Peak from the south near Woolshed Flat. The former railway fettlers' camp at Woolshed Flat, Mount Brown in the background, clouded in again. The historic railway bridge across Wackery Creek at Woolshed Flat. Dick on the top of Devil's Peak. Dick again. The Devil's Peak and Mount Brown. This time Mount Brown is clear. The view north towards Corn from the Devil's Peak. Heading north again on the southern end of the Dutchman's Stern Range. Skirting the Dutchman's Stern Range on the west, the view is down the Mundillo Creek Valley. Views down to the plains to the west of the ranges. Ayers Depot Creek at the base of the ranges on the western side. Walking up the abandoned pipeline towards the weir in Depot Creek. The Commonwealth Railways weir on Depot Creek. One of many spectacular rock faces on the creek running north to Mount Arden from Depot Creek. Views from Mount Arden, this one to the north. South towards the Dutchman's Stern. And northwest out to the Western Plains. Cooking breakfast at the Hanneman's Gorge campsite. Setting out the next morning from Hanneman's Gorge towards Buckeringa Gorge. Carleen inspecting an old RAA sign being slowly engulfed by the gum tree in Buckaringa Gorge. Proby's grave next to the Mount Arden Creek. The trek northeast along the side of the dike with Hut Hill in the distance. An abandoned wheat farm on the northern end of the Wallachra Plain. Hut Hill is in the background. The Wallachra Plain from Kanika Hill. Kanika Ruins and Cemetery at the completion of the fourth section and the halfway point of the walk. Preparing to leave from Kanika in May 1985 on the fifth stage. From the left is Dick Grant, Bob Nicolle, Carleen Melrose, Lynn Stephen, Ziv Baith, an Israeli, and Andrew Eastick. The ruins of Kanika Station. Following a dry stone wall to the summit of Hut Hill. Approaching Hut Hill. The dike and Wallachra Plains from Hut Hill. Waiaka Bluff is prominent on the horizon. Mount Elm and Yapala Peak beyond from the eastern side of the Yapala Range. Looking south down the Yapala Range, Mount Elm is the first major peak. Looking north from the top of the Yapala Range, with the Elder Range and the Wilpenas becoming prominent. The Yapala Range from the west after crossing through the saddle between Mount Elm and Yapala Peak. Walking north along a station track west of the Yapala Range. The Elder Range with Mount Alec the highest point. Campsite on Yapala Waters with the Yapala Range behind. The McDill Graves, several hundred metres from our campsite at Yapala Waters. The home of a fairly large spider. The Douglas Bruce grave near Wanaka. Back on the built section of the Heysen Trail just north of Hawker, the built section will go through as far as Parachilna Gorge. The view south of the Urambilla range from Wanaka Hill. The Elder Range and Mount Alec from Wanaka Hill. Approaching the Elder Range from near Wanaka Station. Procession caterpillars on the move. Approaching Mayo Gorge and the Murnmurna Creek, this area of the Flinders seem to be very heavily eroded. In the Mayo Gorge. Walking up Murnmurna Creek in the early morning. Part of Red Range, which skirts the base of the Elder Range. Part of the Elder Range, the eastern side. Following the Heysen Trail up Slatey Creek between the Elder Range and Red Range. A river red gum whose branches have linked and grown together. Open country below Mount Alec. Lunch break amongst the native pines below the Elder Range. More of the magnificent walking country between the Elder and the Red Range. Mount Alec. There were many of these type of spiders in this area, stretched between the native pine trees. The southern Wilpena Range as we approach Mount Ide. Views from Mount Ide between the Elder Range and the Wilpenas. This view is of Mount Alec. More of the Elder Range with Mount Alec the highest point. the southern Wilpena Range, and Rawnsley's Bluff. Afternoon at our campsite below Mount Ide. Mount Alec in the early morning light. Beginning the ascent of Mount Alec. The Great Stone Gully, which is the best route to Mount Alec. The angle of ascent. Approaching the summit of Mount Alec. Views from the top of Mount Alec. Campsite at Black Gap. The early morning view of the southern Wilpena Range from Black Gap Camp. The Elder Range and Mount Alec from the climb into Wilpena Pound via Bridle Gap. Crossing the Pound floor. The inside of Wilpena Pound from around Idiowie Gorge Saddle. Malagoa Falls in Idiowie Gorge. On the rock ledge at Glenora Falls. And the view from the rock ledge. Setting off for Pompey's Pillar, the highest point on the southwestern corner of Wilpena Pound. It was very wet and raining. Bob in the fog and the rain at the summit of Pompey's Pillar. No view at all. Resting at Tandera Saddle on the way to St Mary's Peak. St Mary's Peak emerging from the clouds from Tandera Saddle. Pompey's Pillar across the pound from Tandera Saddle. Views through the clouds from St Mary's Peak, the highest point in the Flinders Ranges. St Mary's Peak from Nicolle Creek Fire Access Trail. Our wet campsite between the Heysen and ABC ranges on Nicolle Creek. Following the Heysen Trail up onto the ABC range. Mount Abrupt on the Heysen range from the ABC range. St Mary's Peak from the ABC range. The view north along the Heysen and ABC ranges from a high point on the ABC range. The Bunaroo Valley. A delightful walk up a Bunaroo Creek tributary to Yanyanina Hut. Mount Hayward and Aruna Valley behind the ABC range from Yanyanina Hut. St Mary's Peak and the Heysen Range from the same point. Hayward Bluff from Yanyanina Fire Access Track. The view back from the same point towards Wilpena Pound. Old Elatina ruins near Bratchina Creek. Wilpena Pound gradually falls behind as we proceed north. The last campsite of the 5th stage near Trezona Bore. The view south from Red Hill Lookout. Hayward Bluff, South Mount Hayward, False Mount Hayward, and finally Mount Hayward. Crossing Yaluna Creek on the way to Aruna Ruins. Dick and Bob approaching Aruna Ruins with the Heysen Range in the background. The ruined huts at Aruna. The track up to the Aruna Springs, which are mysteriously in the middle of the spur. Bob inspecting the crystal clear spring water. Across Aruna Valley to the Heysen Range. Various views around the original Aruna Station ruins. The end of the 5th stage. The 6th stage commenced at Aruna Ruins in late September 1985. Participating were Dick Grant, Bob Nicolle and Andrew Eastick. The first day involved climbing Mount Hayward, which overlooks the Aruna Valley. The view north into the upper Aruna Valley from Mount Hayward. The view south towards Wapuna Pound from Mount Hayward. The Bukatu Ochre Mine, high on the Heysen Range west of Mount Barloo. The Ochre Mine tunnel went in for 5 or 6 metres into the deposit. At Taringa Saddle on the way north to Parachilna Gorge. Here the Heysen Trail heads north between the Heysen and ABC ranges towards Parachilna Gorge. One of the many mines high on the ABC range. Rex Ellis's camel safari passing by as we have lunch below Mount Falkland. Dick negotiating a steep section on the way up to Mount Falkland. Mount Falkland from just below the summit. Looking down into Parachilna Gorge from Mount Falkland. From Mount Falkland, the road to Blinman is visible and Mount Patawerta can be seen on the horizon. The view south from Mount Falkland, the Aruna Valley on the left with Wilpena Pound just visible on the horizon. The eastern shoulder of Mount Falkland with Mount Patawerta just visible. The base of the chute used to send ore down from the mine high on the ABC range. Mount Falkland Bluff from the mine on the ABC range. The quartz-like material that was the basis of the mine. The view north across Parachilna Gorge from the mine. Mount Samuel is on the right. Templatonia retusa. The end of the final section of the built part of the Heysen Trail at Parachilna Gorge. Abundant water in Parachilna Gorge make creek crossing hazardous. Dry stone walls to reinforce the road were probably built during the mining period at Blinman. Reaching the Orotunga Creek junction, we headed upstream. Water was abundant and flowing strongly in places. Further upstream, the water became much scarcer. Aboriginal rock carvings in an eastern tributary of Orotunga Creek. The Heysen Range from a saddle below Mount Elkington. Falkland from Mount Elkington. The view north including Mount Patawerta from Mount Elkington. Campsite in Breakneck Gorge, adjacent to Breakneck Well. The next morning we headed up Breakneck Gorge to Blinman. Mount Patawerta from near Orotunga Station. The restored mine captain's house near the Blinman mine. The Blinman mine, the Blinman post office, and a dilapidated Blinman home. The view over Blinman from the War Memorial. Mount Patawerta from near the top of Mount Lucius. The Heysen Range and Wilpena Pound from the same point near the top of Mount Lucius. Mount Patawerta again from Mount Lucius, at the top this time. The ruins at the abandoned Artemore. The Artemore shearing shed. The Artemore area is dominated by Mount Patawerta. Crossing Home Rule Flat and approaching Patawerta Gap on the way into Narrana Pound. Campsite in Narrana Pound with Patawerta Hill in the background. Scrambling up the rock slabs on the way up Patawerta Hill. Looking east from Patawerta Hill. From Patawerta Hill overlooking Narrana Pound with Mount Tilly on the left and Mount Hack on the right. Wilpena Pound and the Heysen Range from Patawerta Hill. On the left is Mount Hack, to the right of centre is the Coxcomb, and to the right again is Mount Andre. Patawerta Hill in the evening light as we prepare for tea. Approaching Mulkinga Bore on Magpie Creek. Mulkinga Bore. Dick and Bob approaching the cairn at Mount Macfarlane with Patawerta Hill in the background. A closer view of Mount Hack from Mount Macfarlane. The Coxcomb on the left and Mount Andre on the right from Ben Lomond. Ben Lomond. Bob negotiating a steep section on the way up Mount Andre. The Gammon Plateau from Mount Andre, Mount Searle on the left-hand end and Mount McKinley on the right. Mount Hack from Mount Andre. Patawerta Hill from Mount Andre. The western face of Mount Andre, taken whilst on the way to the Coxcomb. We came down that face and wondered on the way why it was so difficult. The track to Claypan Bore, which runs northwest adjacent to Chambers Creek. Mount Hack from near Claypan Bore. The gully we took and followed to Mount Hack. Mount Hack cairn with Lake Torrens on the horizon. The Gammon Plateau from Mount Hack. Mount Andre and the Coxcomb from Mount Hack, also Ben Lomond off to the right. Mount Tilly and Patawerta Hill from Mount Hack. A sleepy lizard encountered on the way down from Mount Hack. After Mount Hack, the track went west through Warraweena Gap. Relaxing at Rockwater on Sliding Rock Creek. An encounter with a small snake on Sliding Rock Creek. Lake Torrens from Mount Tilly. And Mount Hack from Mount Tilly. Young hot plants on Warriuta Creek near Dunbar Well. The track from Dunbar Well towards Sliding Rock Mine. Bob Mooney hut with Mount Stewart in the background. The distinctive Sliding Rock Mine area. The end of the 6th stage of the walk at Sliding Rock Mine. The 7th stage of the walk started in May 1986, South Australia's Jubilee 150 year, at Sliding Rock Mine. Participants were again Dick Grant, Andrew Eastick and Bob Nicolle.